am so pleased to have you on another episode of HR Growth Network podcast. I'm so happy you were able to join us this morning. How are you doing?
Toyin, thank you. I get so excited for these little chats and always come off so inspired. So I'm really doing well today. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm excited, and I guess this is like a bit of a light week for you because you've got a big event that
Yeah,
has just happened, and you're
absolutely, Toyin. I mean, today's podcast, we're going to talk about mapping your journey. And part of my little milestones in that mapping is I finished up my job yesterday, right? So I start my new role in October, and I am super stoked and excited for this new chapter. So yeah, it's been a great week.
Congratulations once again, Gwen. I know, no, without a shadow of doubt that you're going to thrive in this new role. And I am so happy. I'm so happy because, you're a living testimonial of some of the things we've talked about, if not all of the things we've talked about in our podcast so far, especially today's topic, which is mapping your journey. And I would like us to start off a bit by just, giving a bit of insight on how we have each mapped our journey and what that then looks like for someone who's sitting down, a senior HR professional who's sitting down and listening to these two lovely ladies, Gwen and Toy, talk about
Yes.
mapping their journeys. So, do I allow you get the first turn?
Yeah, absolutely, Toyin. Thank you. And I love the whole lovely lady, so I'm going to just take that. So thank you. So,
Thank you.
when I think of mapping your journey, so I'd like to just, for the purpose of today's podcast, just to split it into two. Because you get mapping your journey in life, which is life, right? It's the kids,
Yeah.
it's family, it's career, it's studies, it's all of those things, and then you get the HR mapping your journey. So I think if we're just maybe just on the life journey, I think it's important to I think it's really important to, when you're mapping your journey, to to do that in terms of what have your achievements been, and we always say that in this fast pace of life, it's look forward. You can't do anything about the past. Focus forward,
Yes.
forward. But I think there's a lot of value in actually just pausing and breathing and looking at where you've come from, because
Absolutely.
sometimes when you get into the hardships of life, or
Hmm.
it's just good to look back where you came from, because that might be a good journey, it might not be, but I think it's about being intentional to see in those areas of that journey, where did you
Hmm.
grow, what are you grateful for, what are the learnings that have come out of that can help you with the future. um,
Yes.
so I think for me and to our listeners today, it's really around, we're so busy on what do we need to do. It's
Hmm.
family, it's career, it's school, it's health, it's parents, there's a lot on the go, and I think
At any given time, there's a lot.
yeah, absolutely. And I think really, what we're not great at, and I'm generalizing because I'm certainly not great at it, but I'm getting better for sure. It's just taking time out for downtime. And when I say downtime, I'm not talking about lying on the beach with a mojito or lying in front of Netflix
That would
binging.
be nice, though.
Exactly. And you must do that. But this is about intentional downtime of saying, okay, where am I? What am I looking back on? And just reflecting on that journey of key milestones in your life. Um, if you go Google mapping your journey, you'll see there's a whole lot of different sciences there, but there's such value in it. People talk about a vision board, and that in a sense is a little bit of what you want to do in the future. But for me, mapping your journey, it's been so valuable for me to kind of, where did I come from? And I actually mapped quite a bit of my journey in my CV, to be fair. So when I did,
Yeah.
when I was doing presentations to potential employers, my first slide was actually mapping my journey, because I wanted to take time to let my new employer know, who am I. Yes, I'm
Yes.
coming in from an HR point of view, but who is Gwen? Little bit of my journey, right? Not going into the detail, but just to give context of where am I from, how many siblings, key milestones in my life. Whether that worked or not, I don't know, but hey, I got the job. So, I think it's just, that connection of not just about the
Yeah,
HR
that
stuff, right?
beyond the CV, beyond the CV connection, it's
Absolutely.
absolutely important, especially at senior levels, Gwen.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Toyin, how's your kind of experience of, before we get into the HR side of it, how's your experience with, if you have to think of, your journey, right, and where you've come from? Like, what do
Yeah.
you do to take time for that reflection for you?
Oh, thanks, Gwen. So in the first instance, I think I'm someone who's fallen in love with journaling and journaling as a tool for managing my mind and managing life events as they happen to me. I remember I probably started journaling maybe at the age of 15, 14-ish. I'm not too sure, but then I remember being in secondary school, high school, back in Nigeria, and just, journaling my day, what's happened to me. I try to do that in the night before I fall asleep, because then I know I've banked all of the events that has happened in the day. And I would say that that singular practice has sort of grounded me. I still journal every night now, as much as I can, except on nights when you're so tired, then I do it in the morning. And the older I get, I found that it's a tool that I'm even beginning to use better, because and we could quickly delve into this. So in journaling, it's easy to just sort of do a brain dump on everything that has happened today, the good, the bad, the ugly, and how that's made you feel. And that's great, because you need a safe space to sort of put things like that down. And as you go into more senior professions, loads of things happens to you. Loads of things happens to you. And you just need a safe space to be able to put that down. So you do that. But in the last 6 months, I have started learning a better way of journaling. And that way I'll share it with you and I'll share it with our listeners. It's more around reframing as you journal, because the way the brain works is, when you recall something, you're imprinting it in the brain, almost like, when you're running that design over and over, and it imprints and creates neural pathways in the brain. Now what you don't want to do is, you don't want to get into the habit of reprinting a negative neural pathway. And that happens to the best of us. Honestly, I remember, being younger and something negative happening to me, and I'm replaying the scenes over and over and over again. And I know I'm not alone on that table. There are loads of people who replay the scenes over and over and over and over again in your mind. And what happens is, you're deepening the neural pathway of that memory, you're making it a core memory, and you're easily then triggered. So you're now establishing new connections. So let's just say, for example, and I'll use this in the sphere of life and in the sphere of work to enable our listeners get into it. So let's say, I mean, you and I are married, we've been married for a while, you longer than I do, and you have a very happy marriage. But we all know that if you look at all of those relations between you and your husband, between me and my husband, not all of them have been 100% positive. There have been arguments. Now, so let's imagine we put up a situation, an argument occurred, and then I am replaying the argument, what he said, how he made me feel. I'm replaying that in my mind several times during the day. And then he calls me. Now, I'm not even giving the space to pick up the phone to talk to him. As I see his name on my screen calling me, the first emotion is going to be negative. Why? I've been replaying a negative emotion. I've been replaying a negative memory all day. So when his name comes up, If I'm not careful, I would more likely put my phone down because I don't want to speak to him. That's the impact of replaying a negative emotion. Now, that happens in the world of work as well. You have an issue with your line manager, or you did this presentation to the board and it wasn't quite, as exciting as you thought they would be about it. And you're replaying it and thinking to yourself, was it because you didn't add enough data? Should you have gotten more collaborators? And you're doing that over and over again. And then an email comes from your CEO. The minute you see the blob saying his name, you're not even reading the subject. You have a negative emotion. You're feeling, you know
Mm,
what? Not again. Not again. I mean, what does he want now? But that's very negative and very disabling for your
yeah.
development as a person, for your development on the job. So, with this new journaling strategy, you're reframing as you write. The events of the day are the events of the day. They are facts that happened. But then, how did you feel about it? In that moment, you felt bad. You're reflecting on it 8 hours later in the evening. Do you still feel bad? What
Mm,
could you take away from it? How are you going to use that to better another situation? How can you sort of keep that particular emotion as a frame in time? You're not taking it away. You know how you're looking at recordings and you can look at what was said between 1 minute 30 seconds and 1 minute 35 seconds. Just recognize that that happened within 1 minute 35 seconds. That's what happened.
mm.
But we've moved forward. We've moved forward in the day. So I'm not going to carry that emotion with me. I'm going to get to the point where I learn from that emotion, I reframe that emotion, and I put it down. You put it away. You're not going to keep reprinting it in your mind such that it then becomes a core memory for you.
Yeah.
Ever since I started journaling in that way, it hasn't changed when things didn't go my way. And this morning I shared something that didn't go my way. It hasn't changed how I feel when things didn't go my way at that moment in time.
Mm.
But then I've moved past that. I've taken the learning from that. I'm moving away positively from that experience. So that's how I'm reframing and how I'm using journaling as a tool to help me make sense and map my journey through life.
I love that, Toyin, and I think you make such important points. I mean, when you talk about the neuroscience of the brain, and what is so amazing is that we can reprogram our brains, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
there's so much science to say, that with certain behaviors and actions you can actually reprogram your brain, because you have people that have this philosophy, oh well, I'm at this age now, or well, this is just the way I am, or there's no hope for me, and that's not true.
It's
It's
not true.
there's
Not true.
definitely things that you can do to rewire the brain in terms of that positivity and that attitude. And similarly, if you want to stay on this negative path, you can absolutely do that. But I think what's
You
so
can.
wonderful is that
It's
we've
just
we've
very disabling.
we've got the choice, right? We've got the choice to be able to reprogram and to, when you
Yes.
see your husband's name come up on the phone, that you can actually be like, yay, and not like, oh, what does he want,
Yeah.
So I think it's wonderful, and people find their own way of
Yeah.
downtime and reflection, and that's through, I've also found recently journaling's helped for me, because it just helps me, what am I grateful for. And I think maybe we chatted about in one of the other podcasts, just so my morning routine, not every morning, I'm not absolutely faithful with it, but I try and get up and I say,
You're
write down
only human,
write
Gwen.
down in
You're
my
only
little book
human.
exactly, like, what are the three things that I'm grateful for today, and because there is, and I think that just sets the mind to, okay, let me shift from, if there's been negative, what am I grateful for? And then I put
Yeah.
down, what are my three things that I want to achieve today? What are the three things? Sometimes there's only two, but I don't make it a
Yeah.
to-do list. It's, what do I
Yeah.
want to eat by tonight? What do I want to, and that might be build a prezzo for the board. That might be, sit with three of my colleagues to check in on employee engagement. It might be those things, but what do you want to
Yeah.
tick off? And then, just sharing with the listeners. So I've started a new thing where I write what is the new word for the day, to grow my vocabulary. So I write that down. And it's amazing when
Absolutely.
you look back and you reflect. And then I also write
Yeah.
a little motivational quote, like you as a superstar, or I actually
Fantastic.
was looking for one that I read yesterday just around failure. It's just saying that failure's part of life, right? It absolutely is, but it's what you do with that failure that leads to
Yeah.
success, you know. So you keep failing until you succeed. You know what I'm saying? So it's just around that. So I write a little motivational thing, and I absolutely love it. But yeah, no, I think some really, really great points. And, I think from an HR mapping point of view, just a
Yeah.
little bit on the HR side of it. So, again, and we're going to talk about goals in one of the podcasts of just like setting an inspiring plan. And I think we'll pull it
Yeah.
together there. But, from an HR mapping point of view, coming to the UK, and wherever our listeners are, old or new, moving or not, I think it is important to, what is your HR map? What did it look like? And I
What
think
does that
there
look like?
again, it's not necessarily focusing on that, but where do you want to be? Where do you want to be in your career as an HR professional? What does that look like? So, a map is also a plan of where you want to go to. And I think it's really important. What I've done is I've said,
Yeah.
okay, where do I want to end up? And giving myself a bit of a timeline on that, be it a year, be it 5 years, be it 10 years. From an HR point of view, what does that look like? And then to say, okay, how do you eat the elephant? A little bit of a chunk at a time, right? Because sometimes your
100%.
elephant in your HR career might be a big goal, but it's saying, where do I want to be, and mapping it back. So what does that mapping look like, be it in terms of skills, qualifications, experience, and even if you just use your methodology, toying of journaling of what does that look like, in a sense you're mapping it out, right? So where do I want to be? What's that time frame? I think it's always important to put a time frame, um,
Yeah.
and then to say, okay, what does it look like in terms of skills, qualifications, and experience, as I mentioned, and to then get a mentor or a coach that's going to take you on that journey with you, because sometimes you don't like to travel alone, right? Most people don't
Mm.
like to travel alone. And it's the same with your career journey. It's important to have someone that's going to hold your hand. That might be a
I get that.
colleague, it might be a friend, a mentor, but really just to kind of have that. And that's what I've done. And then, breaking it down. Sorry, Emma, I've just got a call. And
Sorry.
then sorry, am I back there, Toy? And it's actually my brother's phoning me from Dubai. Can you still see me?
I can still see you, but if you want to
Uh,
take the call, that's all
no,
right.
no,
We'll just
no,
exit
no,
it
not
out.
at
That's
all. This
okay.
is my brother from Dubai, Gordon. For our listeners, he's turning 60 next week, and yeah, I'm so proud of him. Anyway, so just back and closing off with the mapping of the journey from the HR. So it's the big elephant. And then what I did is I sat down and I said, okay, within my role, what does that mapping look like in my current role? What are the things that I want to achieve and leave a impression, leave in my role, and really breaking it down in terms of almost your KPIs, right? So
Yeah.
what does that look like in terms of I'm new in the role? What does it mean for recruitment? What does it mean for engagement? What are the things that I want to achieve, and how do I map that back in my year, 14 months that I was there? So, yeah, I think it's just such a valuable tool. But again, it's about you sitting down with yourself, or with a colleague, or on your own, to just say and give yourself the gift of time to actually allow yourself to do that.
Yeah.
And it just
Yeah.
really has helped me to feel more organized and in control and just intentional about my journey. So that's me, Toyin, in a nutshell.
I love that.
How have you felt your HR mapping with your new journey as a HR in the HR growth network?
That's a really interesting point that you shared, Gwen. Being able to sort of look at what does that map look like in your new role. I would complement that by saying that you want to. So, I mean, looking at the people who are listening to us, and let's say I'm an HR person who's coming to a new country, wherever that new country is, chances are that you're going to feel a little bit like a fish out of water. Chances are. And that's because it's a new environment, new regulations, the processes. Yes, HR is HR, but then there's a different cultural context. And we can't operate without giving due credit to the cultural context that we're operating in. So I would start with how you feel, because how you feel dictates what you do. First off, I want you to understand that this is absolutely normal. It's absolutely normal for you to feel a little bit out of water, a little bit out of your space, a little bit, I'm not sure what my next step should be.
Mm,
Acknowledge that you feel like that and don't berate yourself for it. Absolutely. Acknowledge, Gwen and I, we've been there. Acknowledge that you feel like that, but don't stay in that space. Remember what we said about reframing? So, in this new space that you are now, what does HR practice look like for you? Because we sort of come off with this understanding that I've always been in HR, so I'll always be in HR. Now, interestingly, Gwen and I are on similar yet diverse paths. How do I mean? Gwen is working full time in HR. I'm working not full time in HR, but I'm running my own business, my own HR coaching business. When I was coming into the country, I didn't actively think that I would be doing this now. I probably thought that I was going to go into another senior HR role. Remember, in one of our podcasts, I had shared how I was being interviewed for this role and I was just so sure I was going to get it. So at that point in time, my mindset was I was going to get this HR role and I was just going to continue on that trajectory. Back in Nigeria, I was HR for a country. With this new role that I was interviewing for at that time, I would have been HR for 3 or 4 countries. So that felt like a nice progression. But guess what? Life happens. And in life happening, I am presented with different choices. I sit back and I say to myself, how do I integrate family, kids at the age they are, settling in into a new country, and my career, and knowing that I'm a high achiever? How am I going to put those things, how am I going to spin those plates in such a way that there is balance? And then I look and said, you know what? I think my experience so far, my skill set so far could better be used in consulting, which is something I've always loved to do. So I don't want you to feel listening in on this podcast that you absolutely, absolutely have to do something. No, what you absolutely have to do is take a choice that fits where you are in your life right now. If you are in your life right now in the space where going back to work full time is possible, I mean, Gwen doesn't have kids that are my age, the kids of mine are the kids that Gwen doesn't have kids that are the same age with my kids. So she's able to make a different choice. And you
mm,
have to take that into consideration. And am I happy for Gwen? Absolutely. Is Gwen happy for me? Absolutely. So
mm.
we can't celebrate each other's wins. Absolutely, Gwen. We can't celebrate each other's wins without feeling like I have to do what Gwen is doing. I had to come to that conclusion. It was a place of realization because subtly I was comparing myself to other HR professionals that I knew that had come into the country and they were doing well. And there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that you have those traits of comparison. See, we are human.
Mm.
I can't even say that enough. We are humans, and that trait comes out in your planning, in your thinking. It comes out. Accept it. More importantly, ask yourself, what am I going to do about it? How
Yeah,
am I going to make a decision that is authentic for me?
I love that, Toyin. I love the fact of, you know what, we all are on our own journey, and I
On
get
our
that
own
we're
journey.
human and you look at other people and you think, oh, I wish, but
I
that's not
learned.
your journey. It's not your journey, and you cannot compare.
You
So I
can't.
think, I think, just on that point, toying with you, don't compare. Guys listening,
Yeah,
girls listening, don't compare. You are on your
don't
own
compare.
journey, and it's
Don't
about
compare.
sitting down and saying, okay, what are my next steps? What am I? And if you're not sure what that looks like, then, get a coach, get someone that you can talk to that'll help you unpack it and pull it out of you to say, okay, what are the
Absolutely.
options? What could I be looking at?
Yeah.
And sometimes,
Yeah.
and I think for me, moving into the UK, as we've chatted about it in the podcast, the culture shock, sometimes you have to go slow to go fast. Sometimes you have to go
Absolutely.
back a step to go forward,
To go
and
forward.
I think it's just being settled with that knowledge that you're not going to walk into any new job, any new country, and things are just going to be, and it's just adjusting your expectations and being kind to yourself along the way, right? And trust that
Yeah.
things will fall into places they're meant to be. I had a friend that she said,
Exactly.
if things will always work out in the end, and if they haven't
It,
worked out yet, they're not. It's
it's not
not
the
the
end
end.
yet.
And I just thought,
I love
it's
that.
often come back to me to say, you know what, things are happening, and it's just trusting and being patient in the process. So, Toyin,
Yeah.
thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. Love it, love it, love it. Just you're so
I love
special.
having you, friend. I love having you. I'm looking forward to our next topic, which will be about self-care. And I think that's something that we absolutely want to sort of share with our listeners. Well-being is such a huge part of your journey, such a huge ingredient to your success, and you really need to prioritize that. I look forward to chatting with you on the HR Growth Network podcast in our next episode. Thank you so much, Gwen, for being a
Thank you
part
to
of
you
this.
and your listeners, and wishing you lots of love for your week ahead.
Yeah,
Thanks,
see you
Toyin.
later.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.